Hola, ¿cómo estás? Or should I say, Assalamu alaikum. Ancient Córdoba, from Roman history to Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain. One of the most amazing places I've ever visited. Lost tapes.
Just film.
Alright, Mr. Flashpoint History, you inspired me to come here, and I'm here. I don't know, 3 years ago I listened to your show, something like that. It's really cool. The street here is named Almovidar del Rio, probably after the Almorovids. I'm in Cordoba. That place over there is called Casa de Castillo al-Andalus. This is the Mendahat el-Zahara al-Raḥmān III's pleasure palace. And it was really cool because there was a couple that were Muslim coming here. The woman had her job. I love this kind of stuff, man. Walls and gate of the capital city. Looks like we're in interior or something. Tunisia, I don't know. It's so cool. Enter Al-Andalus, the great mosque of Córdoba. Wow. Just the architecture, man. Holy crap. Section that al-Rahman III got Byzantine artisans from Constantinople, Christian artisans and materials to come here and help build this. He was actually good friends with Byzantine Emperor Leo I. Inside this grand mosque, I've never seen a building like this before. Wow. Converted into a church, but alright, welcome to Córdoba. Inside. This stretches way down this way, The Grand Mosque, 787 AD built of Córdoba. I don't know, man. I think it could fit probably in the heights of Córdoba. 50,000 people here, maybe? Praying all at once? Imagine that. What that must have been like. Let's talk about the history of Córdoba. I should have filmed a whole video in here, sorry. Alright, this place is blowing my mind. Mix of just 700 years of being a Catholic church, 500 years of being a mosque before that. Over in these areas, you can really see the Islamic, and I think they took some Roman stuff, the Islamic builders, when they made this. It's because some of those look real like Roman pillars. And you could just, the halls, how huge it is, why did it need to be so huge? It's absolutely incredible. Far it goes in each direction. Okay, we're inside the great mosque of Córdoba here. And this is the example of Rahman added architecture and designs with Byzantine materials, Byzantine style glass. Eastern Romans from Constantinople were great friends with the Caliph al-Raḥmān III, and they sent artisans here with the gold plating and design, very Byzantine Christian style, but obviously Arabic writing and Islamic. And this mosque is incredible. If we turn around, you can see from 784 to about 976 AD, this was added to by the different caliphs of Córdoba. I just can't get enough of that spot. The Byzantine style artisans and glass helped build it, and you know, just showed the amount of wealth that they had. Over here, I'm pretty sure was Morocco, part of the mosque where everyone faces to. There's a Christian statue there now, but you can't quite get over there. But look at the ceilings inside. That's the part of the mosque that everyone faces towards. And, you can just imagine in a city of 1 million people, everyone Islamic prayers in here. They probably once had carpet. I'm not going to go down to my knee. But anyway. Okay, anyways. So, they were friends with the Byzantines. They helped contribute to this mosque. They obviously had great architects and artisans that bit and piece of this mostly. Some of it was added later, you know, in Christian times, but a lot of this here is original. It's so massive. So, some interesting things happen in Al-Andalus as a whole. Like in 777, because of the growing power here in Córdoba, the northern Muslim city-states princes asked Charlamagne, the Frankish Christian king, for help against Córdoba's rising power. With a mosque like this being built, they definitely had help. Actually, that was right before this was built. Charlamagne got his army together. He led an army into northern Spain. They're basically mercenaries, aligning with Muslims, fighting the forces of Córdoba, which went back and forth here and there. But their downfall was actually an encounter with the Basque people. The Basque people were proud of their territory, and they didn't want the Franks coming through with their Muslim allies. And they hindered Charlamagne, probably his only loss ever in history. Interesting place to tell this story. Look at these pillars. So hundreds of years later, an epic poem called The Horn of Roland was written about this battle with huge historical inaccuracies that people still believe, which everyone says it was Muslim versus Christian, but actually Muslims were working with Christians, and the Basques are the ones who beat Charlamagne, not Muslims, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Into the times of the 800s AD. So yes, this was the Great Mosque. But there's Jesus there. Jesus is in the Quran. Jews and Christians were people of the book. They were tolerated. Probably not let inside here. So you can really see the different mixture of stuff here. There's some Christian art. The arches are Muslim. The ceiling is Gothic. This floor, like this, is obviously not made for a church. You know, the pews and everything. This is for the people to get down on the ground and do the Muslim praying, obviously. But it's just something I've never seen before, man. This kind of stuff. It's crazy. So much Catholic art in here. You can see actually the building itself there. I don't know how much of it is original to the mosque, cathedral there. Maybe a lot of it, but this courtyard is original. A lot of these pillars are original, and a lot of this wood pieces are original. And from about the 700s AD, the Grand Mosque of Córdoba, Spain. Let's focus on Córdoba. Talk about this place and its history. Okay, so like I said, some places in Spain welcomed the change of the guard. The Visigoths were kind of tyrants in a lot of places, but not here. Córdoba actually fought hard for the independence of the Visigoth kingdom governor, but they were heavily defeated, and they Islamic force coming in and sacked the city. It wouldn't be until 756 AD where it would be developed again to become the jewel of Al-Andalus. So here we are This was first built around this time. It's now the Cordoba Cathedral. You can see Christian art. And this part is Islamic. Let's go. So let's go back a bit before this. Hopefully, like I said before, I can go to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, tell the story more in depth. Very fascinating history. So this is the Grand Mosque. Well, let's go back into history. So from 610 to 632 AD in what is now Saudi Arabia. Prophet Muhammad had his divine experiences, which are a bunch of interesting stories, and he started the Islamic religion. He battled his rivals and led the conversion and takeover of vast territories that we talked about. But he died in 632, and his successors were the leaders of the new caliphate called the Umayyads, who also came here to build this. Let's talk about how. The Umayyads, right before this, the Umayyads was who spread out and attacked and came in all over North Africa, all the way to Afghanistan, up into the majority of the Iberian Peninsula. They were here in Cordoba. But back in Arabia, Syria, and Baghdad, around 750 AD, things changed. We don't need to get into too much of details. There's a lot of cool ones. But it's basically, okay, so this was the entrance to the Grand Mosque. I love visiting mosques, now church. We're gonna go inside. I'm gonna show you what the inside's like. Okay, but let's talk about, this is what created the Shiite Sunni divide that exists to this day. The Abbasid clan in Damascus, Arabia, who had the claims to the bloodline, to the caliphate from the Prophet Muhammad, overthrew the Umayyads in brutal fashion. So they built several places all over North Africa and Arabia and Persia that looked very much like this. This was the early Islamic architecture, the gates like this. You can even see right up there, inscription still. Probably maybe it's a verse from the Quran. A lot of these things were added later, and of course it was built as a cathedral in the 1200s. But okay, well, back to the story here. So the Umayyads were systematically taken out by the Abbasids one by one, executed and rounded up. And I was in Damascus, I believe, still a city in Syria, by the way. And many were killed, and they took over the caliphate. So, but one Umayyad refugee from that situation there, his name was Abd al-Rahman I. He escaped. A Syrian refugee whose family was mostly massacred. He worked his way all the way across North Africa and into this area. Over a few years. So many of the local Muslims who had been here for a couple decades were loyal to that original Umayyad Caliphate. Not the new usurpers. Even though there was lots of tribal infighting that often happened all over early Islamic Spain. But when this guy came here, Abd al-Rahman, they all agreed to claim him as the leader of all of Al-Andalus. And he started his own emirate, separate from the central authority that was moved to Baghdad. And he chose where? Cordoba as his capital. So what did the capital need? From 784 to 787 AD, he had the fantastic Great Mosque of Cordoba built right here on this spot. We're in the garden courtyard of it right now. is now the cathedral with a beautiful tower, obviously, but it's a really interesting combination, unique to anywhere in the world of history. And I'm pretty sure what we were talking about earlier, these are ancient Roman. These are mile markers which were on Roman roads, and this is a Roman capital. This was probably moved here later from some ruins, maybe. It could have been when they built the mosque. This is in Latin here. The tribe. Man, I recognize some of this. Oh man, I think I might see the emperor's name right there. Caesar Divine, Augustus. This is from the time of Augustus Caesar when these were built. The first emperor of Rome. That's pretty crazy. All right, but that's way before this. That was in the 414 BC to 27 AD when these were made. So that's a lot older than this building. This building, 784 to 787 AD. A highlight of not just Islamic history and architecture, but all of world architecture and all of world history. One of the grandest buildings in the world at the time. If you think about it, people like in London and Paris were living in the middle of the dark ages in the 700s. Like times were rough, man. They had no infrastructure to build anything like this. So it's really, an amazing moment in history. The mosque would be added to by many of his successors all the way until 976, and the rest of the story here at the Grand Mosque of Córdoba. See the massive building back here. I'm not sure exactly what was built when, but we're on the site of this. All right. So into the 800s AD, the Emirate of Córdoba was an enlightened emirate, one of the finest cities in Europe. People of the book. People of the book is what people that were Jewish and Christian were called. So there was actually a heavy level of tolerance in the city. They were tolerant, but they had to pay higher taxes and could only worship in designated areas of the city. Like all new Muslim Spanish cities, but they were tolerated. Many got high positions in society, but because of things like the heavy tax burden and the danger of not being totally free, many people converted to Islam. So new converts coming in here to the Great Mosque, and it was the new faith of most of the people, and many people were moving in, Berbers, Arabs, people from North Africa. There were slaves here. It was an evolving city to the 800s, over 70 years now, 50 years under Rahman. Okay. Still many people converted. There was a new class of people called the Muwahhalad, which were people of mixed ancestry or newly converted. And they are often, though, treated like lower class citizens in their mind, but sometimes not. But then them, along with the Berbers, created some tension in the Cordoba society from time to time because it was ran by Arab and Syrian elites who were the wealthiest people in the society. So other times, though, like in the 850s, a specific story happened, which is interesting to talk about here, now Catholic Church. The religious minority tension created that we just talked about. Like there was a Cordoba priest who got extra zealous, and he went into a non-designated area and professed his faith to Christianity, which was against the law. Professing his faith to Jesus and the Lord. So there was a no tolerance to this kind of behavior. That was a big no-no. So you cannot profess any other religion but Islam, other than in designated spaces or privately. So he was in prison. But because he was a well-respected member of society, he wasn't executed. which is what would have happened to the common Jewish or Christian person if they did that. So, you know, it was an enlightened place, but kind of intense at the same time. But, so he was thrown in prison, and his community of Christians were mad about this, and they were inspired by him professing his faith in public wherever they wanted. So they came out and do it, hundreds of people, and they would go into Muslim neighborhoods and do Christian things, and profess their faith for Christianity, and around 40 to 50 people, I believe, were executed because of this. Yeah, they became martyrs in their eyes. So Al-Andalus-Córdoba was enlightened, but it also could be pretty brutal and scary at times. Definitely, if you came walking in here as a non-Muslim, professing your faith for something else, that would have been crazy. Okay, back to the story. And I need some water. Still another angle. 780. It's incredible. These wooden structures, it looks like they hung here, is probably from the original. As you can see by the floral design. Something else I found that was interesting here is we also saw this in Palermo, Sicily. Córdoba was one of the first, or the first, after the fall of Western Roman Empire, to have running water in the city. First city in Europe to have that in the medieval times. And because of the strict Muslim cleanliness rituals before you go in a mosque, it was important to have water flowing so people could wash their hands and face and mouth. That's what that is right there. That's incredible. Okay. So, al-Rahmān, the beginner of the golden age of Córdoba. So there were some revolts and secessions and fighting after his death. A little bit before that story, we talked about the Christian guy. Like the second ruler, the second emir, he had to defeat all his brothers in battle to rule. But then him himself got exiled to North Africa. Then the third ruler, he was kind of crazy. He crucified 5,000 of his fellow Muslims for defying him in some city nearby. I think it was Seville. Crucified 5,000 people. His own people. Crazy. So in the 80s though, AD or so, came al-Rahmān II. That really started the golden age of Córdoba. Although there was still always seemed to be instability. Especially in the surrounding areas of Spain. You had the northern Christian kingdoms that were, fighting back, but sometimes not. Sometimes the city would revolt against Córdoba, sometimes not. So actually, it was a really confusing situation. But okay, 912 AD came the next Abd al-Rahman III, the most glorious leader of Córdoba ever, who expanded on the mosque, expanded on the city, did so many very fascinating things. Shouts out to Flashpoint History for your awesome podcast on YouTube that accompanied with this. So he started ruling as Emir in Córdoba 912 AD, and this is when Córdoba really became magnificent. So he was an interesting guy. He had an Arab father, but his mother was a Christian Spanish concubine. And his grandmother was actually a Basque princess. So he was a mixed heritage. So when he took power, Córdoba was actually reduced just to a city-state again. They lost their territory to rebellions, but he expanded the territory again. Their control began pushing out in every direction from the heart of Córdoba here. And look at these old rocks, man. This is original, 700 AD. Oh, it just crumbled when I touch it. Oh, sorry. Okay. So they went out in every direction into the Iberian Peninsula, and he aggressively put down rebellions, or he made people in every town swear an oath to his allegiance or pay the price if they didn't. But many chose the peaceful route. Still others didn't, had to be subjugated. Again, remember, these are fellow Muslim leaders. Muslim on Muslim crime. You know, it was really, people think it was always this like Christian versus Muslim thing. Sometimes Christian had Muslim allies. Sometimes Muslims were fighting against other Muslims. Sometimes Christians would fight against other Christians with Muslim allies. It was much more complicated than people make it seem. So often, different emirs of city-states who were Muslim would war with each other all the time. So Al-Rahmān III mastered this, though. He finally, in 913 AD, the second most prosperous city in Al-Andalus, Sevilla, he captured because they weren't capitulating. Very cool. Okay, they visit Sevilla and talk about the history there. But 913 AD, Sevilla, the second most prosperous city, came under control of Córdoba, 913 AD. Okay. So after this, other things were happening in the wider Muslim world. The Fatimid Caliphate broke off from the Abbasid base in the Middle East in North Africa, which became a major threat to Al-Andalus. But at the same time, it served as a buffer zone between here and Baghdad and the former supreme enemies that massacred the Umayyad family. So, if the Baghdad wanted to come this direction, they would have to go through the Fatimids, and they wouldn't want to do that. So it actually protected Al-Andalus, even though they were a new threat. So now it went from one, then to two, now there are three major Muslim powers in the world. Later in Al-Rahman's reign, the Fatimids attacked an Al-Andalus port close by to here called Almeria, actually close by to Malaga more. And Al-Rahman sent a retaliation force led by a loyal Eastern European general who was a former slave named Ghalib to fight back. So the Fatimids ended up, after this grand general who's going to get into our story a lot later, the Fatimids ended up abandoning Northwest Africa, and they went to Sicily. It started Muslim Palermo, which we went to last year, which is crazy how it all ties together. Wow, what do you think about that?
Cool.
All right, so, and then they went from Sicily down to Egypt and made their caliphate's capital Cairo, which remains long. It was like the early 600s AD, 630s AD city of Medina or Mecca was transplanted right here with the Prophet Muhammad, right in the middle of Spain. It was really incredible. We're going to talk a lot more about his reign. Okay, so the usurper into the early 1000s AD. We just talked about he kept the young boy in his golden cage far away from the center city, the palace, busy with mindless entertainment. He brought in more Berber and Sakalika Eastern European troops. His home base and this mosque was still here, built by predecessors. Still probably very glorious and used by many, many people. Around the year 1000, Córdoba had about 1 million inhabitants. So every probably day, definitely every Friday, this mosque got filled with a good portion, that maybe 100,000. But definitely, I didn't look into this more, but definitely there was at least 50, maybe 100 mosques all over the city. So, Ibn, he, with his new victorious name, I forget the name, it's right here. So he went on about 50 raids into Christian territory. It's very interesting how his great mosque now turned Christian, but you can still see things like this. But went out into the north, Christian territory, capturing slaves and gold, different things of wealth, and places like Barcelona in 985, and Santiago de Compostela, Galicia, 987. This was the military zenith of Córdoba under him, led by that usurper. And sadly, the arts and sciences and the economy suffered. The arts, like that, this place design, because he spent so much money on the military. He dismantled the system of the different viziers, and he had only a bunch of yes men around him, and he ruled with a fist of cruelty, which was not very nice. It worked out until he got sick and died in the year 1002 AD, and his son took over. But his son got lost in the worldly pleasures like wine, women, and violence. Not very Islamic thing to do. Speaking of that, one interesting thing is, never understood that, how you're supposed to be modest, things aren't supposed to be sexual in Islam, but some of these rulers had like sex slaves and all that. Okay. Oh. This is now a Catholic temple, they told us, so be respectful here. Alright, so the son of the usurper, he continuously raided annually into Christian lands in the north, just for fun basically, dedicated to the Holy War. And, you know, it was getting less and less results in the Christian kingdoms up north, albeit small and independent. They started getting more experience from all these constant raids from them here in Córdoba, and they got stronger because of this. And they started holding their own militarily, like Castille, who are a couple hundred years later are the ones who turned this into the cathedral. Look, these guys are... So in 1008, the son, Sancho, died. The son of the usurper, his name was Sancho, and his half-brother, little Sancho, who made a big mistake. Unlike his brother and his dad before him, who kept the legitimate caliph. Wow, look at this architecture. He kept the legitimate, in the palace while they ran things and kind of just ruled de facto ruler. He proclaimed himself caliph, and his dad and brother, they were his high-level bureaucrats. These builders of this kind of stuff angered the remaining members of the Umayyad clan. So when he left on campaign in the north, the Umayyads retook the city. And when his army heard about this up north, they abandoned him because he was so stupid to lose his own capital. Little Sancho was his name. And on his return to reclaim power, he was executed outside the city. So, despite this grand place, 1009, was the beginning of the golden era of Cordoba starting to end. Civil wars throughout Al-Andalus dismembered the caliphate, weakening all of Muslim Al-Andalus forever. The Berber Sakalika, Eastern European soldiers who were once loyal to Al-Mansur, remember, Al-Mansur was the usurper. They aligned with Castille, of all people, and they attacked the city when the Umayyads had like a democratic control, not a caliph anymore, kind of, but they aligned with Christian Castille, the Muslim Berbers and Eastern Europeans, and they massacred most of the makeshift forces inside the cities that were not warriors but artisans defending the city. Oh, what a disaster. And then the some Berber rebels raided the city again in 1013. The capital of Cordoba was on its way to falling, and Al-Andalus was sent into anarchy. 1031, after a battle, the last caliph forces were beat outside of Cordoba, and the mighty caliphate, the heights, building things like this that the world has rarely ever seen, was over. The city changed into an elitist oligarch republic that much of the former caliphate turned into. All the city-states all around Spain turned into something called tarifas. So in 1070, the Tarifa of Seville came to Cordoba to defend them from an invader Tarifa of another area, Toledo, which is near Madrid. But then after defending the city, the leaders of Seville decided just to take over Cordoba themselves. So in 1075, the Tarifa of Toledo came back and sacked and took the city. 1091, a new force came into Al-Andalus that would change everything forever from North Africa, called the Almorovids, who still upkept and uses mosque definitely for another couple hundred years. But we're going to talk about them at the city gates they built into the end of this place was built. So this area obviously was added later, 1200s or so, and the artwork is crazy. Altar, ceilings, wood carvings. This area over there, and over there, more like the mosque. We have Jesus, a new addition to the great mosque here in the Catholic times. You know what? I think it's interesting that they still call it the Mosque-Cathedral of Cordoba, because, you know, obviously it got turned into a cathedral in the Reconquista times, but you can't deny its architecture and how it looks, the pillars and everything, the original mosque design. There's some other places in the world that could take note of that. Istanbul, I'm looking at you with the Hagia Sophia. Okay, anyways. Jewish citizens and Christian citizens in Al-Andalus, Cordoba were tolerated. They were known as people of the book. Jesus is in the Quran. He is a prophet listed in the Quran. Not known as the Son of God. This place is just blowing my mind. Beautiful.
It's doing that thing where it's not ending again.
This is the Grand Mosque of the Emirate, then the Caliphate of Cordoba, which got turned into a church in the 1200s, but holy crap, I can't believe I'm seeing this. You can see the Islamic design, and ooh, we got some wooden boards here. What are all those? Probably pieces of the original mosque. And I can't believe I'm seeing this right now. It opens again in an hour and a half, so I gotta go inside. But might as well walk around the outside now. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Allah Akbar. That baby is all mosque style. Very cool. At least, what is that, 1,300 years old? 1,400 years old? Something like that? Not that good at math. He's probably better at math than me. Oh, this is cool. So this one is Islamic, and on this side, the Islamic one crumbled and they made a Catholic one. Remade. Horses are going. We got a big tower over there. We got a wedding going on. This is a cool city. Oh, wedding photos?
Yeah, like just the photos.
The Grand Mosque / Cathedral. Córdoba. Oh man, I never said the name. Córdoba. The Latin name, the Islamic name, and the Spanish name are all pretty much the same. Córdoba with a Q. Córdoba. Ah, okay. All right, this is a massive Roman temple. Those up there aren't original, but that's all right. Still looks crazy. Temple to Emperor Augustus, the Augustan family, maybe. Maybe some other kind of god, but it just shows how huge of a Roman city this was. This building was huge. What in the world? It soared into the sky. Roman Córdoba. Go and get obsessed with the Islamic history. Roman Córdoba. Well, Temple of Romano. Wow. Córdoba was the original name of the city here at the ancient Imperial Roman Bridge, which was upgraded over time, looks like, by the Almorovids and used all through the centuries of the history we're going to talk about. All right. The city has Carthaginian origins, or Phoenician origins, but the specifics are not known. Well, let's go into the Roman realm. So after the end of the Second Punic War, 206 BC, it became a Roman city. Wasn't noted that though until 152 BC in the Roman Republic. A flourishing town. I can't believe though I'm barely gonna talk about the Romans for once, but some stories are noteworthy. Like in the brutal civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey in the 50s to 40s BC, this city was involved. Caesar himself led armies into Spain. Julius Caesar fighting Pompey's generals in 49 BC, but not quite here. He left to face his foe in what is now Albania, a city called Durrës that I've been to, really cool place, and in Greece he won the war. But in 45 BC, Julius Caesar, as supreme dictator in Rome, had to come back to Spain because there was a few cities that were still Optimate holdouts, loyal to the Pompey cause, even though he got beheaded in Egypt. So 45 BC, with his ultimate heights of power, Julius Caesar came back to Spain, and one of the cities he came to get into his realm was Córdoba, that was holding out, that was loyal to Pompey. A brutal happened in Córdoba. Córdoba was the original name, Córdoba. Caesar had to build a makeshift bridge across this river because the garrison that was defending the city destroyed the current bridge that they had. So Julius Caesar built a bridge right here, and a heavy garrison of loyal Pompey soldiers came out to meet him. Even though their leader was dead, they still had famous generals. Julius Caesar's side took heavy losses right here. And actually, they had to sneak out in the middle of the night, across the river. So they never took the city. But several more sieges and battles occurred all over Spain. Caesar, the master general, fought off his rivals in about 10 cities in a final battle in a city called Munda occurred. So after the main enemy army and leaders were taken out or taken prisoner, as a brutal punishment to Córdoba, Julius Caesar came back here and he remembered that fierce battle where they destroyed the bridge and killed a lot of his men. So Julius Caesar, you know, a hero to a lot of people, a interesting factor, one of my favorite people in history, but he also did some crazy stuff like this. He came here to Córdoba, 45 BC, and he had around 20,000 people massacred for their support and defiance in that battle. Most of them were slave soldiers that were garrisoned in the city, around 14,000 of them, but some of them were probably just inhabitants. That's pretty intense. Jeez, Julius Caesar. Anyway, into Augustan times, after this, the city was firmly into Roman hands, and into Augustan times, Roman Empire times, this bridge was built. It still endures to this day, and there's a lot more to the history of the city. So that's pretty interesting. Into the Roman Empire times, this was a massive Roman Empire. I'm not sure to what god or goddess. I've heard someone say to the Emperor Augustus. So now the temple is huge. There's so much money put into this place had to be important and prosperous. And why? Because it was the highest point along the river. In the Roman Empire, in the time of Augustus, the first emperor, as BC turns to AD, the capital. This became the capital city of the province of Baetica. I'm always trying to do the Latin pronunciation. Shout out to Scorpius, the YouTube guy who speaks Latin that lives in Rome, the American guy. Cool. Anyways, a famous Roman, Seneca, was born in the city, 65 AD. Seneca was a big figure in Roman history and different things. And this was a strategic, important Roman city because it was at the highest navigable point on the Guadalquivir River, a river port to ship Spanish olive oil, wine, and wheat around to other areas of the Roman Empire, especially to the capital, Rome itself. This is modern reconstruction. It looks kind of cheesy in my opinion, but I guess it's kind of... This is some original capitals, Corinthian capitals of the massive temple that was here. So it was an important city and wealthy. Because all over the Roman Empire, you know what was coveted? Spanish olive oil and Spanish wine was some of the best products anywhere in the Roman Empire. And also Rome itself had a lot of hungry mouths to feed. And Spain had wheat. So this was an important Roman port town. This was a massive temple to worship the emperor. That's not real, but this part is. Okay.
Go.
Alright, so these tiny streets, these pillars are original. Maybe even Roman origin. From probably the Córdoba times and how that is. It's just incredible walk around. Cuts and alleys, little gates, it's all just built up over donkeys here, so horse carriages here above it. All right, let's go. One more. All right. This was a collection of Roman and Islamic things just stashed away over here in this side street in Cordoba. Look at this Roman capital. This massive, huge building that supported maybe the temple that's nearby here. I got an eye. I could see when something's good. This is all old stuff from at least 2,000 or so years ago to 1,000 years ago. Massive Roman capitals. Here's an Arabic writing on here. Cordoba Caliphate times. Whew. Try that again. Roman murals. That's really incredible. Different capitals. Up here, though, is something very special. Look at these Roman mosaics. I don't know if these were found in Cordoba. Look at this one. Look at that. Horses. Incredible place. How did I not find this in my research? So I just came upon. This is just this collection of Islamic and Roman stuff. This is a huge mural right here. Different windows, capitals, people. 97 AD. Islamic designs, Roman murals, near intact. Look at that one. This is really cool. Intricate, zigzagging stars and lines of a Muslim archway and this wooden ceiling. Remember we saw one like this in Albania? The Ottoman mosque? Or that Ottoman thing that guy took us in? Remember they said where they pray and they chant loud? It's the same. It's a Greek too. Massive statue. Wow. Oh man. Let me clarify something here. Are we standing in Iran, Tehran, or Mecca or Medina, Saudi Arabia? Maybe Jordan, maybe Cairo, maybe Tunisia? No, we're in Spain. And this was the Grand Palace of the Caliphate of Al-Andalus. And many people called them Jews. We're going to call them Jewish. Also Jewish people were some advisors and Christians and many Muslims of different faiths and people that were ex-slaves like Eastern Europeans lived in this domain and Berbers and all kinds of other people. Advisors and people that ambassadors maybe from Constantinople, the Byzantines maybe came through here, from the Franks in the court of the successors of Charlamagne, from Germany, England, who knows, all the people that came here. But it probably wasn't the other caliphates, so they're pretty much enemies with the power in Baghdad, Damascus. Look at that up there, it's a little R. R for Ray. And then the other one that was in North Africa, but beautiful architecture, man. So cool. Wow. Look at this here. This one looks almost original. Retouched up a little bit in here, but that's okay. It was heavily damaged and looted in the 1000s. Look at this huge one. Alright, as you can see here, Al-Khazar is not just a palace, it was a city. A pleasure palace of concubines and religious spots and soldiers and slaves and all kinds of craziness was going on here. It was just something magnificent. Covered, the ceilings were covered with gold and lined with marble. It's been heavily looted, obviously, and restored. But just imagining what it looked like nearly 1,000 years ago, or over 1,000 years ago, is crazy. Man, or about 1,100 years ago. Let's go see what it looks like from down below. Ibn Rahman III. The scale of this place, this is so crazy. Look at that gate there. Oh man. And the gardens, some of the gardens still exist. A few trees. It's a little windy today. I love history. UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Nice.
It gets a little windy here, but this was the Grand Palace area for the Grand Viziers that were like advisors to the Caliph, the leader of the kingdom.
Inspired by Roman, actually. Cool dome-shaped designs. It's like we're walking around Baghdad or something. You know, Mecca or Damascus or what's the capital of Persia? Oh, Tehran, something like that. One thing about Al-Rahmān III was he had many viziers, up to 70. So what a vizier was like a advisor. So most leaders usually had one, maybe two advisors, but he wanted many different opinions, and not all of them were Muslim. They had Christians, Jews, different ethnicities. Eastern Europeans lived in his domain that were once slave soldiers, Berbers, Arabs, locals. This place is really cool. Let's tell more of the story. So this is where they conducted the governance of the
Go.
Alright, we're up here at Al-Khazar, Al-Rahman III's palace. And this maybe during his son reign. So this was his grand palace outside of the capital. There's some restoration a little bit. I think I know the story of why this was built. Okay, so he ruled until 961 AD, until the age of 70, ruling for an astounding 49 years. The golden era of Al-Andalus under his reign. But obviously the caliphate would excel for many decades more through his successors. His son, successor, Al-Hakam, ruled until 976 AD. Installments, and just getting the breadth of this palace is impossible from right here. But let's move back a little bit. All right, thank you, camera woman. We got this whole place to ourselves right now. All right, so Al-Hakam was until 1976, 1,000 years earlier, 976. He also led the city of Córdoba and the caliphate through successful times. It was an educational, cultural, and one of the intellectual capitals of the world. Libraries had upwards of 100,000 books around the city. But I think around the time when this was used, his successor, the son of Al-Hakam, was only 11 years old when he came to the throne as caliph. And being so young, rulers all throughout history, from emperors of Rome that started too young, to emperors of China that began ruling too young, to kings and queens, that's when problems started to happen. So he was not fit to rule for being so young. He did not have a lot of time to learn the ways of the trade of being a good ruler. So, you know, advisors had to help him. So Cordoba started being more and more isolated from the other world powers, even though they had close ties with Constantinople and other places. During this time of the 11-year-old caliph, a sleuthy usurper named Ibn Hamir, over many years, worked his way into being part of the harem of al-Rahmān, and he became friends with powerful generals like General Ghalib, who was an Eastern European general that won a bunch of battles in North Africa, and also powerful women he got close with. He even got engaged to General Ghalib's daughter. So General Ghalib was al-Rahman III's best general, who was a former Eastern European slave. I could never pronounce the name, what they call those people. But anyways, okay, so this guy was real sleuthy, Ibn Hamir. He had a large Berber force behind him too, a big army. And while Rahman was still alive, he became close friends and advised him. But this whole time, he likely was plotting. So his first plot was he heard of a coup that was about to happen, supposedly, where the young 11, 14-year-old caliph was going to be killed. But this gave him the opportunity, because everyone believed him in this plot, to take out all of his political opponents and enemies. He then convinced the young caliph, the 14, 15-year-old, to retire pretty much into this palace. He said, come on, relax. You have all the luxury and beauty in the world here, right here up at El Alcazar. I'll take care of all the governance, all the military campaigns and raiding the north and everything, and dealing with the Fatimid Caliphate. And the young caliph, you know, he was the son, 14, 15, maybe 17 years old, teenager. He stayed. And this is where this thing comes into play. So the guy, Ibn Hamir, he made this a big military center. So this is when Cordoba became its military heights under this guy who was a usurper. He fixed up the palace, which is including this part, I believe. So this is around the 970s, going into the 980s. And he installed tons of guards here and soldiers, not letting anyone in or anyone out, especially the young caliph. That was in here with mindless entertainment and jewels and luxuries and gold, while this guy was doing a bunch of things. So back in Cordoba, right over there, back there a little bit. All right, we got some people here now. Back in Cordoba, Ibn Hamir, he imprisoned more top officials and scammed his way to doing other things. And the last bastion from al-Rahman's times was his general Ghalib, now age 80. So he was very old. And he noticed what his now son-in-law was doing, because his daughter, remember, was married. So while Ibn Hamir was up north, General Ghalib decided to make a valiant effort to meet him north of Cordoba a little ways. Not sure what's north, I didn't look it up first, but one of these directions. And the old aging general fell from his horse and died, and his army lost. So Ibn Hamir in the 980s then named himself Al-Mansur, proclaiming himself victor, which Al-Mansur means he was victorious in completing his coup and usurping. He never claimed to be caliph, though. He kept the young boy in here while he ruled Cordoba with an iron fist. And he worked quickly to consolidate his power, and he kept the young boy here in his golden cage, busy with mindless entertainment. Let's talk about the rest of the story. All right, good view of the city of Cordoba from up here at the Al-Andalus-Palace. It's hard to imagine that this was a city of maybe as many as 1 million people. One of the grandest cities in all the world from around the year 800 to 1000 or so. Right up there. There's the modern city. It's crazy. About 1,000 years ago. And this was the palace that in the 950s to 960s, the Caliph al-Raḥmān built. Maybe a little earlier, actually. This was the city's mosque. Wow, see, a little earlier, 941 AD. But the dates, what the exact date? That was pretty good. All that's left of the mosque is a tiny rubble of rocks. I think that might have been actually down there. Maybe that was it. So they had their own personal palace mosque, and now there's just a couple palm trees there and the walls. Too bad you can't go there. Cool. Right, can't get down there, but that was the palace mosque. It was huge, man. Imagine the dome and minaret on there. Built around 941 AD. And the city of Cordoba, city of nearly 1 million people, or up to 1 million people, was right down there. Kind of reminds me of the Palatine Hill a little bit in Rome. Actually, the palace is far around there, but you know, the leader up on the hill, looking over the city, in his grand palace of immense riches and his own religious sites. Well, the only exclusive can get in there. This is cool. Okay. Al-Rahmān III in 929 AD did something unheard of in the Muslim world. He proclaimed himself caliph up here in Cordoba, which means he was the spiritual and de facto leader of every Muslim in the world, creating the Cordoba Caliphate, which obviously back in Baghdad they didn't agree with, but really they weren't powerful enough anymore to send anyone to contend with this, or the other caliphate city. So Cordoba at this time was one of the most advanced, largest cities in Europe, with over 100,000 people, maybe up to 1 million. Palaces like this and mosques were built all over the city with lavish gardens, kind of one still exists here a little bit. Bathhouses. It was the first medieval city with a central water supply, paved streets, and street lighting. Silks, jewelry, leather, artisans were prized that came from here all over Europe. Silver and gold coins were pressed in Cordoba. The gold came from sub-Saharan Africa. And it would be another 300 years before another European monarch pressed his own gold coins. There was an amazing trade network from a few ports he secured in 951 in Morocco from the Fatimids that stretched deep down into sub-Saharan Africa. Ambassadors and trade went to France, Germany, and Constantinople. The relationship with the Eastern Roman Byzantines was actually very close, with many official meetings and visits between the two, which definitely happened up here. So Eastern Romans were here. They must have marveled at this palace. Far trip all the way from what is now Istanbul. In 940 AD, it rivaled Constantinople as the greatest city in the world. So Rahman, like we said, had many different viziers and advisors to get different opinions and governance. When the other emirs or caliphs elsewhere would have just one or two, he hired Jews and Christians to his court. He employed former rebels instead of punishing them, letting them excel at their skills to improve the caliphate. Yeah, he hired Jewish people and Christians to his court, as well as Muslims from many different ethnicities. He employed former rebels instead of punishing them and executing them, letting them excel at their skills to help the caliphate, like especially military. You saw the bravery and military strength. It reminds me of Genghis Khan did something similar with rebellious people. So he brought in Eastern European slaves, which I wonder where in Eastern Europe they're from. They weren't very specific about that, but they were highly trained Eastern European and Berber slaves that fought valiantly in his army, that were very loyal. So they were, yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones, the unsullied soldiers, right? Córdoba was a diverse and fascinating place under his rule. Math, sciences, libraries, religious institutions, and more thrived. Astrologers scanned the skies when nobody else, almost anywhere in the world, was doing that at the time, except for maybe in China. It's the reason why many stars to this day, not that one, but at night, many stars to this day have Arabic names, because the astrologers, astronomers of Cordoba named them. That's pretty amazing. More people. Okay. So it was one of the most cultured cities in the world. We're going to go down there in a second. Many experts and historians agree. Another place I went to was Muslim Palermo, Sicily. That was also on a similar level, a little bit after, I think, at the time, if I remember correctly. But I wonder how the two cities interacted. Probably not well, because Palermo, Sicily, was run by Fatimids, and this was Umayyads, so they're rival clans. Anyways, now we're sitting here in the middle of the magnificent palace he had built on this hill to this day, called Adenat al-Zada, named after one of his favorite concubines. It was a magnificent pleasure palace, the size of a city, on the outskirts of the capital. The mosque, villa, gardens, and quarters for servants, slaves, and guards and soldiers. The great hall had gold and marble roof. So that, unfortunately, the Great Hall, oh, I can't believe it, it's under restoration right now. But there's a cool thing that I saw in a museum. Let's go look at it where it recreates it. But this is the official. Cool. Speaking of the fabulous gardens, this was the largest one in the entire caliphate. Still got a little pool. Very cool. And look at this stuff. Didn't even come to this side. You told that whole story. Oh wow. This was put back up, obviously, but still looks amazing. All the rooms and areas. And, whoa. Okay, it's pretty amazing. These are good restoration works. They use a lot of the original pieces in the design, like this one over here too, that we're gonna walk closer to. You know, Al-Rahman III, he wasn't perfect. He had some unsuccessful military campaigns in the north and was defeated badly against some of the Christian kingdoms he was trying to raid, especially Lyon. And also he would kill some of his advisors if they crossed him out of paranoia. And one time in this palace, he even had his own son executed in front of the court, which is pretty intense. But so a mix of enlightenment and brutality. But regardless, it was written of Cordoba at the time and this palace and his court up here, that it was like Medina was relocated to Cordoba, and the Prophet Muhammad himself was overseeing the state here because they were the Umayyads that were part of the same tribe as Prophet Muhammad a couple hundred years earlier. The Umayyads believed, and they were the true inheritors of the Caliph started by Muhammad, in some people's opinions. So that still is an issue today in the Shiite-Sunni divide. I'm not going to get into the middle of that, but and all from a Syrian refugee from Damascus. his great ancestor who first came here a couple hundred years before this palace was built, 700s. So he died at the age of 961, at the age of 70, ruling an astounding 49 years. Alright, 976 AD, around the time of the successor. This was the home of one of the prime ministers of the Caliphate, Jafar ibn Abd al-Rahman. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names. I'm getting the names mixed up. That might be the guy that was the usurper. Yeah. Anyways, this is restored, you know, but they used original pieces to reconstruct it like it looked, because not long after this was built, maybe just about, I don't know, less than 100 years, 80 years, it was destroyed and sacked. It's very sad to happen. It's cool because it's part of European Union prize for cultural heritage, and I think most European history is, you know, either Roman or Christian, but this here is Islamic, which is really cool. Standing in Europe, seeing stuff like this. Yeah. So we're sitting right in the middle here of the servants' quarters. There's an oven right there. Kitchen. Little wood-fired oven, probably. Wonder what kind of food they ate. Probably not pork. Yeah, there's all kinds of different servants' quarters that lived here. Imagine that, dude. Caliph in his palace. Cool. So 1091 AD, a new force came into Al-Andalus called the Almorovids, who built this city wall here of old Córdoba. They were of mostly Berber and a little bit Arab descent from North Africa, from around the area of modern Morocco. They created a new caliphate, empire, the Almorovids, which built this. So the Almorovids, they knew of Al-Andalus, of course, and they knew about their former heights of the former caliphate in the capital here, but also its decadence and loose Muslim laws, like alcohol was allowed. They drank wine in Cordoba, in Al-Andalus, you know, freedom of Christians and Jewish and women. And they also heard about the constant instability and the bickering of the tarifas and the city-states and the civil wars and the allying with Christian kingdoms of the north and Castille and Muslims and Christian allying. And so the Almorovids, as their power grew, they had all this in mind as they came into Al-Andalus. So they attacked and added most of it to their empire. The Almorovids were kind of scary sounding. They were black hooded warriors and fundamentalist fundamentalist Muslims, so really strict law, Muslim law. Many of them, even Muslim, not to mention the Christian and Jewish communities in Al-Andalus, but even the local centuries-long Muslim communities trembled at this force coming into their community areas because of their indifference of how their way of life seemed to be about to become gone forever. So the Almorovids in 1075 AD took the city of Cordoba, and after that they built up this gate to secure their control. So you can see a lot of it still there. But the Almorovids, as it often is with strong-handed, strict rulers, their grip on power began to be weakened. And constant infighting of succession and governors, and they got tempted by the old decadence of Al-Andalus themselves, you know, women, wine, partying, The stuff that they used to be angry about, they started getting tempted by it themselves. Seems to happen often with warrior cultures. Really, they start from the bottom. They're kind of poor and tough people. Then they rise to power of a strong, strict warrior culture. And then as soon as they gain a lot of wealth and money, they start to get softer and start to lose their strictness. So that also happened with the Almorovids under 200 years, really. So also, in my opinion, it's people that are hardliners, you know, trying to force strict laws onto a society constantly, every day, punishing people, executing people for trivial things. It has a heavy toll on a ruling leader, empire. So that's what I believe happened to these people that built this gate. So in 1121, the inhabitants of Cordoba revolted against their Almoravid governor. But still, they held on to slight power, even though revolts were happening. But in 1158 and 1160, local Al-Andalus Muslims, remember the Almorovids were from North Africa, really newer inhabitants, local Al-Andalus people, enemies, sworn enemies of the Almorovids, aligned with the Christian king of Castille. Their combined forces ravaged the countryside and tried to take the city, but likely this But it wasn't a straight siege that took them down. In 1224, the Almorovids sent a new governor to the city who decided to say, screw the Almoravid stronghold. I'm just going to run the city independently. And into the 1200s, 1220s, 1230s was the start of an instability and the downfall of Cordoba. But this gate saw a lot of that action. Alright, so we're in the area of the Jewish quarter, actually, and this man, Ben Mamadis, probably was Jewish, but it looks like he lived in 1204, so that was in the waning days of the Muslim times here. But I think, just a hunch, I think most people, this was common dress for everybody, despite their religion. You wanted to fit in, you know, be cool, be part of the society, especially if you wanted a really good job or a high-ranking position or do business with everybody. That's what everyone looked like around Spain. Interesting, huh? Or around 800 years. This is a synagogue. Amazing design. Built in 315 AD. But Cordoba, in many cities, has a sizable Jewish population. To the Roman times, actually. So long time population. And you can tell that this artwork is inspired by the same types of artisans that were making things all over Cordoba in the Al-Andalus time. In the Muslim-built places, in Arabic, here we have Hebrew. But the intricate hand carving, it's really beautiful. Very cool. You know, Arabic inspired right there. Okay. Cordoba. We've been here all churches. This is definitely probably around between 1400s, and that was the era of the Reconquista. Look at this, just design and fascinating. Over here massive Roman era temple. Right by this and by this over here. Dome. Definitely looks like something that came from an Al-Andalus-Moorish structure. This place is crazy. I wish I had more time.
Ray, it's not ending again.
Alright, so this local kind of side of town, you can see the dome of that church is massive. That could have been a mosque, I'm not sure. But it's a cool spot. There's like 3 churches all around. And I thank everybody for listening and listening to me ramble and read. And this is Córdoba, Spain. This is a couple days after my birthday, 2021, just turned 39. Super blessed. I feel like great to actually go to this place that I've heard so much about. The angels are calling. All people believe in angels. 3 Abrahamic religions: Jewish, Christian, and Islam. Don't forget, it was the angel Gabriel who visited the Prophet Muhammad. The angel Gabriel. That's a big hint. That's it. Alright, obviously this was more than just a sleepy town. Still massive constructions were done like this. Got the Castilian coat of arms, I believe, up there. This is super influenced by Roman Empire architecture. You see the Corinthian columns and the triangle top, and that just looks epic right now with the clouds. Córdoba history. A UNESCO World Heritage Site. Phoenician, Carthaginian, Roman, Visigoths. Big time Islamic history as the capital of the caliphate for a long time. Castilian, Catholic, Spanish, Andalusian, Spain now. UNESCO World Heritage Site. An amazing town. Yeah! Here from this church into the fall of the Islamic, start of Catholic Córdoba. So in the 1200s, stability caused the spiraling to its downfall. The city revolted. Rulers changed a few more times. And then the city, for a while, aligned with the Emir of Granada, which was the last Muslim power that would actually exist for nearly another 300 years, all the way till 1492. That area is still called, this area too, but Al-Andalus, or Al. That province is still called Andalusia here in Granada, and Malaga, and southern Spain, because these were the last holdouts. But interesting, as the city aligned after all that crazy instability with the Emir of Granada, Ferdinand III of Castille, the Christian king, in 1236, came into Córdoba and sieged it for a brutal 3 months, which is surprising to me when I researched this. This far south, you know, I thought the Reconquista happened down here, especially here, because this was like the capital of the caliphate. I thought it happened a little bit later, you know, the 1400s, like Granada, Malaga, Almeria, different places like that. But no, 1236, Castille came down here. The Reconquista took the former jewel of Al-Andalus. Catholic churches were built. This could have been built on the side of a mosque. Actually, it kind of looked like it. Different. Built up later. So the the siege of the city took 3 months, and just everything started to decline. Unfortunately, the city. Uno momento. There we go. All right. The city declined after this. Really, it was in the 1200s and 1300s. It was a Castilian military base for their attacks into the Emir of Granada. But after Granada fell in 1492, interestingly, the same year as Christopher Columbus, which is strange, that also left from Spain. The Emir of Granada fell. The last of the Islamic city-states, caliphates, Emir, all that stuff was over after 800 years. This was the former capital of all of that for a good amount of that time. The city of Córdoba actually turned into a quiet town of churches and monasteries and aristocratic houses, churches like this. The economy never really recovered. Now, it's based on a lot of tourism and arts and different things like that. Restaurants. But the economy never came back to its heights of, around the 900s. And, would it ever? How could it? I don't know. There was a lot of strife through the Middle Ages. So, eventually, like most other, I don't know exactly when, but eventually, like most other Spanish cities, Christian cities, Catholic, all Muslims, and even people with mixed ancestry, even people that converted, mostly were deported. And also a lot of Jewish people were also deported. It's kind of sad after its interesting cosmopolitan past. But what happened in Córdoba is, as other cities around Spain, like Seville and eventually Madrid and Barcelona and several other cities, those became more larger and prosperous, and industry started in those. Valencia, Córdoba's importance kind of lessened. It was just this sleepy, quiet town. Interesting. But obviously, still an amazing place for a lot of reasons. Let's close this out on the river or something like that. Thanks for watching. Hey, buddy. All right. Well, into Spanish times. Obviously, this city kept a lot of its charm. And now it's a really cool place. Córdoba. I'm not for any side here. I don't, one religion or the next or this or that. I'm choosing this, and I think this is better. I'm just telling how it is throughout history. Craft beer and wine. Córdoba. Oh, this is hard to film like this with that. There we go. Whoop. Here, look at that. Arabic writing. Huge Roman constructions. What was this place, man? Oh, man. Wow. Me gusta historia. Lo siento. Muchas gracias.
No problema.
Adiós. Oh.
Las salas de exposiciones del museo están aquí.
Ah.
La entrada es gratuito.
Todo bien. Oh, vale. Thank you. Woo! What was that place? Wow. And that's like a 12 to 1400. That's an old church mural thing going on there. That was insane. Alright, we're in the area, the Museum of the Grand Palace of Córdoba. This is an Arabic ethnograph near the end of the reign of Rahman III. Ibn Rahman III, about 953 to 957. It says, Prince of Believers, may Allah preserve him. al-Rahmān III. It doesn't say that. It's pretty cool. Over 1,000 years old. Near the end of his reign, near the heights of this palace. Recreation. See that? We're visiting the Caliph. Looks like real people. Alright, this is the Grand Hall. That's not open, unfortunately. Oh, that's pretty cool. About 950 15th or so AD.
Bienvenido seas, otoño.
The Grand
Ojalá
Hall.
veas cumplidos tus deseos. Encontrarás en nosotros el mejor consejo y mucho más de lo que
Tell this story here in Córdoba with this map. I love geography, so this explains what was going on here. So we're right here on this map, Córdoba in Spain, Al-Andalus. But let's backtrack the story a little bit here to this area in what is now Saudi Arabia. So around 610 AD is when the Prophet Muhammad, this area, started having his divine visions and getting people to follow him. He went to Medina, and that's a whole nother story. Maybe someday I'll go to Saudi Arabia and tell this historic story. That'd be really cool. Okay, so the first Islamic caliphate was the Rashidun, the very start of everything, about 610 to 632 AD. So after Muhammad's death, the Islamic Caliph, well, during when he was alive too, he led armies all around here into Syria, and after his death into 632, they kept sweeping out into every direction you could see here. They fought the Byzantines, whose capital was right here, Constantinople, around here in Syria, and Jerusalem, took a bunch of that area. They took out the Persian Empire, who were an interesting Zoroastrian religion that existed in this area forever. They swept in there, changed that whole culture. They've made it all the way out to areas of Afghanistan and India, you can see here. And they swept across North Africa in waves. First going through Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, modern day Algeria, all the way to Morocco. And the grand generals conquering all this land, once they got to the Atlantic Ocean, they said, what else can we conquer? But they looked out across the sea from here in the tiny, tiny little strait there, where all the water from the Mediterranean comes, called the Strait of Gibraltar, in ancient times known as the Pillars of Hercules, the end of the world. So they saw the land visible across the seas, and an intrepid former Berber slave named Tariq ibn Zayed took a 7,000 person horse-mounted army in 711 AD, so about 100 years after Islam started and the Prophet was alive, into Hispania. The weakened Gothic leadership didn't know what hit them, and the beleaguered peasantry, largely Christian and some Jewish, oftentimes welcomed the regime change because of the suffering under the Goths, the Germanic Goths who overthrew the Roman Empire. The peninsula would fall from a 711 to 718 AD, except for some Christian holdouts in the north up here. See that little black area? It was never conquered. But they even spread into some areas here of southern France, into the realm of the Franks. But they were pushed back after a battle to the north near the area of Bordeaux around here. So that was as far north as the conquest got in the early 700s. But let's focus now on Córdoba, which we'll talk about next. But this whole area is unprecedented in most all of human history. Maybe the Roman Empire, the Mongol Empire is up there with the amount of territory conquered in a short amount of time, along with this time. Here's some fragments of the Alcazar Palace. We're in this little museum here, and sadly, tragically, they're doing restorations on the Great Hall, so I can't visit that. I can't believe it. But this is pretty cool, actually. That shows a little recreation of it. Oh, and it's stopped with the people inside. Turn it off. Okay, so tragically, this area is closed. But here is the recreation. There's the Caliph sitting in his throne. Al-Raḥmān III, the great ruler who ruled for 49 years and built this place. So that's the Great Hall there. The place is being restored. But the Great Hall had gold and a silver roof. And walls made of thick marble. A giant pearl was on the ceiling, a gift from the Byzantine Emperor Leo. There was ebony, gold, gems, and mosaics all over the Great Hall. And in the middle of the hall, you can't quite see it here, but you hear some ambassadors visiting him from different places. You can stand around a little bit so you can see the back. So in the middle of the hall, I was really looking forward to seeing this pool. It was a little pool full of mercury. A little pool full of mercury. And when light would come in from the ceiling light, it would shine light into it, dazzling the visitors, because light, when it hits mercury, lights off. And to impress special visitors, he would have slaves secretly vibrate the pool. And when the light hit it, when the mercury was vibrating, it would shoot up like lightning and astonish everybody. A man of great esteem. People from all over Germany, France, Byzantium, Constantinople would come and greet him like this. And there's him and his many viziers. He had many advisors. You can see some of them standing there next to him. Of all different religions, really. It was a multicultural thing. And here's some pieces. Fragments in the museum, beautifully carved. You can see Arabic on the inside, like classic architecture and artistic styles of Islam, which was flourishing here in the mid 900s. About 960 these were built. You can see the Arabic inscriptions. These are actually pieces from the mosque that was in the palace. Here's a picture of an area that we can't go to right here. It's being restored. Here's a good picture of it. And really, it was not just a palace, it was a massive city. Look at this picture. al-Raḥmān, the third drawing room. All right, well, let's see what we can see outside and tell some more of this story. The pieces that are left preserved like this. Very cool. UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is the ruins of what's left of the Great Hall. Really bummed out that it's not open, but this is what it currently looks like. They're doing restoration work to probably save it from crumbling. This to be able to walk around in there would have been very interesting. Anyways, what surprised me is this was only active for about 70 years. The boy emperor who we're going to talk about, the boy caliph who we're going to talk about was basically imprisoned up here inside this palace, a golden cage. We're going to talk about him. So this is where he was as the usurper took over. Man, I wish I could have walked around and saw that. Oh well.
Bienvenido a la mezquita catedral de Córdoba. Está realizando una visita cultural a un templo de Córdoba. Respete el silencio y permita que las personas contemplen este lugar. Muchas gracias. Welcome to the Mosque Cathedral of Córdoba. You are on a cultural visit to a Catholic
UNESCO World Heritage Site number, I think 51 now I've been to in the world. Yes, something like that. There's this crazy Australian guy. He's trying to go to all of them. He's been to way more than me, but it's still pretty cool. Not another one. UNESCO! Woo! This is the Almorovid gate.
Córdoba, Al-Andalus history, Julius Caesar was here, Roman history, modern Spain, amazing!